Well, good afternoon and welcome to another little video. This video is going to be a follow-up from one that I posted earlier in the week about getting off drugs and alcohol as a part of the process, I guess, which tends to happen naturally, the process of pursuing your own spiritual good or highest good. One of the points of realization that you come to with that idea is that you can only suffer so much. You can only live your life in the world and bang your head against the wall for so long before you start to wonder what it's all about, why you're here and why your life is the way it is. And if you're like I used to be 25 odd years ago, you probably use drugs and alcohol as a way to cope with the meaninglessness and the emptiness and the lack of belonging that you found in your life. And for me, I remember that being as something that was kind of in my subconscious. I didn't know why I was uncomfortable. I didn't know why I had anxiety. I didn't know why all of these things that were sort of like stirring beneath the surface were in me. Why I couldn't just fit in with the crowd and have one or two drinks, you know, like everyone else. I had to go mental and write myself off every time because I felt incredibly comfortable, I felt incredibly uncomfortable in social situations. Try that as a tongue twister. So whilst initially, I guess, for me anyway, I can only sort of talk about it from my own perspective, but for me, I was introduced to drugs, to cannabis specifically, when I was 14 years old by one of my very good friends, Ted, back then. And Ted, if you're watching this, peace, man. And whilst initially that was for teenage fun and something that we used to laugh and have a great time, and you know, you'd go to a party and all of that, eventually what happens is the mind catches on and you realise that you can use that drug or alcohol or whatever you choose to cope with certain situations in your life that perhaps are not the party scene and everything else. They're just everyday, even going to work. There's a lot of people I speak to that just dread getting up in the morning and having to go to work, and I've been in that place too when I was cleaning toilets for a living. There's nothing more humble than that, I don't think. But anyway, but the idea of using cannabis and cannabis is a common one. A lot of people write to me, like regularly, and say, oh, I just use a little bit of weed to take the edge off. And it's like, that's all right. I'm not going to tell you not to take the edge off with a little bit of weed. I don't really care what the law says or any of that sort of stuff. But I'm telling you, you don't need to. Right now, through spiritual determination to give up the world and follow me, which is Jesus' call to you, and you could just as easily be the Buddha or Krishna, follow in the way that I walk, and you know, do as I do, teach as I teach, and learn what you learn. But in that pursuit, right, as you begin to take more and more interest in your own inner realm, in the state of your own mind for inner peace, certain things begin to just fall away by themselves. And of course there's going to be this clinging on, can I let go of cannabis yet, and am I able to stop drinking, and all of these sorts of things. And maybe you're in a rehab program, 12 steps of AA or NA or something like that, who knows. But eventually what happens is, as you begin to forgive yourself for your thoughts and judgments and meanings that you've placed out on the world and everything, in the realization that I don't know what the fuck I'm even doing here. I don't know what the meaning of life is. Why would I be fearful of anything, and why would I defend myself from anything, etc., etc. Right? So as you begin to apply that kind of thinking to your world, pardon me, hiccups, the triggers and blocks and things that were there initially tend to just dissipate. They tend to be removed miraculously. Right now, there's a lot of prayer involved in that, and a lot of meditation and all the things that go along with a good and solid and true mind training program, such as A Course in Miracles or the 12 Steps programs or the Bridge program, I think it's called, that the Salvation Army run, and there's a bunch of others. But as you begin to transit through these, the application of the use of these principles in your life, you'll find that the same sort of situations that popped up to annoy you or make you feel unsettled inside, that would make you reach for a drink or roll a joint or whatever, no longer seems to upset you. And you kind of like notice it, but you don't have the emotional attachment there because you're no longer fearful of things. You've forgiven yourself the fears that are been projected onto the world, and taken responsibility for your own state of mind and applied the principles of miraculous healing. And I call it miraculous because it has to be not of you, right? Like the prayer of the heart for the healing of the mind. For a miracle, I need a miracle, God or Lord or Creator or Universe, Krishna, whatever, it doesn't really matter, right? You're appealing to that which can't be corrupted by your ego. You're appealing to that higher sense of self within you, which is within you, which you will discover through little acts of faith, which can't be corrupted because you don't remember God. You don't remember what the ego is. And everything of you, and keeping my finger there, is what corruption is, right? The experience of time and space, of the physical experience, is what corruption of the true self is. Not that it can actually ever truly be corrupted, but in the illusion or in the belief or in the potential of the, what would you call it, the dreaming of being corrupted, which seems very real. And so the awakening from the dream, which is what spiritual pursuit is, it's a path of awakening. We transform our minds, we go through the purification to awaken from one idea of ourselves by embracing or re-embracing another one, and that occurs through the forgiveness of the old and allowing the new to be what it is without trying to decide how that ought to look. And I hope that makes sense. You may want to rewind this a little bit and just go through that a little bit. But so as you notice in your determinations to pursue your own spiritual enlightenment or your own awakening, these situations that once made you roll a joint, now you couldn't think of anything worse. It's like, oh God, I don't want to do that. That'll make me feel weird, because you actually begin to enjoy the state of mind in its pure state. And I guess the joy of finally discovering that clean place within you, that fresh, it's like, I don't want a beer, I just want to keep that place there in me that's where it is, And that doesn't mean, of course, that you won't roll a joint or that you won't have a beer or you won't go to a barbecue and whatever, but you won't be drinking 10 to everybody else's 1, and you won't be trying to write yourself off because you can't handle the emotionality that comes up in you because of the separation anxiety you experience in close and intimate relationships with others. I still enjoy a beer, and I enjoy a pipe, a tobacco pipe, not a cannabis pipe. That's done for me, I think, my days of that. But I still enjoy beer very much, but I rarely get drunk these days, and if I do have more than 3 or 4, I tend to find myself not really getting, and I don't know how to explain this, but not really getting affected in the same way that I used to. It's kind of like I realise there's a thing happening within me where I seem to drink myself into sobriety. Even though the mind tends to be a little bit cloudy and you get a bit wobbly, but you're not drunk. It's like, it's really hard to describe. And I remember the story of Ram Dass, where he goes to India to find the enlightened master. And he, if you don't know who Ram Dass is, he was one of the inventors of LSD. And what do you call it? A chemistry student at university in the States, and I can't remember the other guy's name. It's like Neil Armstrong, and who was the other guy. But anyway, Ram Dass went to India and found this guru up in the hills, you know, and he had a vial or a bottle of his LSD tablets with him, and the guy was particularly awake, you know, and when I say awake, I mean spiritually tuned in, and he knew that Ram Dass was coming before anyone even told him, and he was waiting for him, and he said to him, "You've got a bottle of pills or whatever it was in his pocket, and give them to me." He said, "I know you want to know if the experience that you have on these pills is anything like enlightenment," and which of course is exactly why Ram Dass wanted to go to India and find a true enlightened guy, enlightened mind. And the guru took the whole bottle of LSD tabs, and nothing happened to him because his mind was in a state of perfect purity. It couldn't be affected because he was just holding that space, holding that energy. And Ram Dass couldn't believe his mind, and I may be a little bit astray in the story here. Anyone who's a Ram Dass fanatic can correct me on this, but this is from my recollection of reading one of his books 25 years ago. But he stayed there for many years, from what I remember of the story, studying meditation and a particular transcendental, I think it was, meditation or something. But anyway, it just, you know. So the idea of then too using drugs as a way to try and experience what enlightenment is false. I mean, people tell me all the time, "Oh, you can have that experience on DMT." No, you can't. You can think you can. There's no catalyst for the experience, right? If you use a catalyst, that's not it. It's something that happens automatically in the mind, where heart and mind connect, and boom, shanky, you're gone from here. In an action of mind that happens and needs to only happen once. And I remember the story of Osho, who apparently reached enlightenment when he was 3 or 6 or something, and then again when he was 20 something. And I look at that idea and I think, well, that's a bit ridiculous, you know. And I'm not a big fan of Osho, I've got to admit, but to remember your father, to remember your creator, you only have to remember it once and it's there forever. Like, why would you need to remember it twice? You can't deny it once you've seen it, once you remember it. So don't be surprised as you go through your transformation when you suddenly change your tastes and your desires to want to deal with the world on your own terms rather than miraculously begin to shift, and you realize that you're not the same person, you're not the same animal in the skin, you know, and things don't affect you the same way. There could be the same stuff going on right in front of your face and you just don't have any emotional trigger, you know, there's no attachment there. You've cut that attachment or healed that section of denial in your own mind, and it's like whatever you give a meaning to external to yourself is your own denial, and boom, you know, keep your finger on your nose for accuracy. So the experience of the world then, pre-spiritual determination of any kind, is always going to be one wherein you feel anxiety and stress and strain, and you don't know why anything is the way it is. That's what the ignorant and selfish perspective of the world is, and it's not until you begin to think selflessly rather than selfishly, when you begin to think of giving rather than getting, and when you begin to think of others, you know, rather than just yourself, that things begin to change. And it can be a tumultuous transition, which is why I always recommend the workbook of A Course in Miracles with 365 lessons. There's one lesson a day for a whole year, and if you give it the integrity that it's due, if you can realize somewhere in here, you know, somewhere in here that the mind that wrote that book, and there's people going to turn off when I say this, but the mind that wrote that book isn't a mind that walks the planet. Right? The book was channeled from, let's say, Christ mind to man mind, and produced in a book form in the 70s with incredible pinpoint accuracy as to the human condition, and the way out of it. And you can't argue with it. You can stamp your foot and deny it and say, no, I don't want to believe that. But the fact that you don't want to believe it means that you've heard what it said. If you've heard what it said, it's already too late, and it's telling you that there is no world. Right now you heard it again. That the world is an illusion, the world is not your home, and that we are from eternity, and we are travelers here in this temporary illusion of time and space, wandering around again and again in this circular idea of life, lifetime after lifetime, or experience after experience, which is better because it's just the one lifetime, repeating something that's already over, repeating something that's already occurred, reacting to it as if it were real. And so my declaration then to you today is, you know, and if you can hear this, if you are a true reflection of my own mind out there that can actually hear what's being said, it's done. But that's a place you get to, and it's just like the Donovan song. First there is a mountain, then there is no mountain, then there's a mountain again. It's like there's this constancy of bringing yourself back to here, bringing yourself back to here, and by so doing that, shortening the time it takes between Alpha and Omega, to come from the perspective of conceptually looking at the idea that it's done and that there is no world, to the experience that there is no world, and the knowledge that only God exists. And it's been fun. It's a bit like watching an old rerun of something that you know the ending of already, but you enjoy the ending because it's a very, very happy ending, and you can't look away. And I've been to, this is a funny one, I've been to, what was the movie with Jesus, the crucifixion, the resurrection maybe, Resurrection with Mel Gibson, the one that he made, and where they brutally portrayed the flogging and crucifixion of Christ. And there was people in the cinema going, "Ah!" and screaming, and there was young girls going, "No!" and walking out and crying, you know, and everything like that, as if that was actually real to them and really happening, having a complete emotional attachment to something that they knew was a movie, that it wasn't actually really happening, but yet it plucked at the heartstrings. It's the same thing with this. Right? In my mind, having had an experience of my enlightenment in 1997, I know for fact this is not really happening. But yet I still find myself occasionally having my heartstrings plucked by the emotionality of cause and effect relationships in the world that reflect my old ideas of what I thought the world once was, which show up for me for the idea of healing or relinquishment of the temporal association that I've bound myself with them, bound myself to with them. So anyway, I love you. That's about it. I don't want to rabbit on too long. I haven't made a video for a while. I've just sort of been giving it a rest and allowing a new space, a new availability of light, I guess, to dawn, and going through the rigors of that, usually at 3 in the morning. And it's funny, if you get on some spiritual pages, you'll be like, oh, Mercury's in this and that's happening and whatever, and you can expect all this sort of stuff going on. I have no fucking clue what to expect. I just stay in the action of forgiveness of self for all my judgments about anyone or anything, whether it's relevant in the here and now or not, and allow that miracle-minded or open-minded state of constancy of wiping the slate clean to push me into whatever energetic associations I need to be in, you know. And every time there's a shift, a conscious shift or a shift in consciousness, albeit a little teeny one that seems to happen, or something that throws you for a 6, there's going to be confusion, and there's going to be loss of identity. There's going to be all sorts of crazy stuff but there won't be any lament of it. You know, you'll pop out the other side usually within 3 days, and everything will be hunky-dory again, and be like, what the hell was that? You don't need to know what the hell that was, because then you're just going to have to let go and forgive yourself for all the thoughts of what the hell that was. It's just the activity of God moving through you, the activity of Source doing what it needs to do, and just be happy that it's actually doing something. Be happy that your mind is beginning to open at last, and you're beginning to look at the world for what it is, and perhaps hopefully making decisions for your departure based on the offering of this spiritual determination from A Course in Miracles that I'm telling you about, or whatever modality of spiritual enlightenment you're using, albeit Buddhism or Hinduism or Sufism or any of those sorts of things. Everything will succeed because of its purpose. You know, you're attempting to remember God, remember the source and origin of all that is, which must therefore include you. Bye.